I never imagined that naming a planet could change my life forever. The moment I announced it, the world celebrated. Scientists praised me. The media called it historic. But in the middle of all the excitement, one reaction stood out: my husband's. For a split second, his face went pale. His hands clenched. His eyes widened with something I couldn't quite place: fear? Shock? Guilt? He tried to mask it quickly, forcing a smile, but I had already seen it. And my heart whispered a terrifying thought. Did he know? Because the name I gave that planet wasn't random. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a test. And if my suspicion was correct, then the man I loved, the man I trusted, had been lying to me all along. My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, I believed in two things: science and love. Science has always been my anchor, my constant. Ever since I was a child, I was fascinated by the vastness of space, the mysteries of the universe, and the idea that somewhere, out there, something was waiting to be discovered. That passion led me to become an astrophysicist, and after years of relentless work, I achieved what many only dream of. I discovered a new planet. And love? Love was supposed to be my safe place. I met Daniel Carter at a university seminar 10 years ago. He was charming, brilliant, and effortlessly confident, the kind of man who could make an entire room hang on to his every word. I was the shy, overly ambitious scientist buried in research papers. He was the charismatic journalist who made even the dullest stories sound like poetry. We were opposites in many ways, but somehow we fit. Or so I thought. Our relationship moved fast. Late-night conversations turned into shared breakfasts, and soon into wedding vows. He became my biggest supporter, always pushing me to chase my dreams. When I'd spend sleepless nights at the observatory, running calculations and staring at distant galaxies, he'd bring me coffee and remind me why I started in the first place. I married a woman who's going to change the world, he'd say, with that proud smile. And I believed him. I believed in us. For the past 8 years, our marriage had been steady, warm, comforting, built on trust. He traveled for work often, covering global stories, while I lost myself in the stars. We had our differences. His world was words, emotions, and people, while mine was numbers, data, and logic. But in the end, we always found our way back to each other. At least, I thought we did. It wasn't until I discovered that planet until I named it that I saw something in Daniel I had never seen before. A crack in the perfect life I thought we had. And once you see a crack, you can't unsee it. The night after the announcement, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Daniel was beside me, scrolling through his phone, his expression unreadable. He had barely spoken since the press conference, offering only a forced smile when I asked him what he thought. Something was wrong. Did you hear the way the crowd reacted? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. I never expected that kind of response. Yeah, he said, without looking up. It was something. That was it? No excitement? No pride? He had always been my biggest supporter, so why did it feel like my success had left him shaken? I turned to face him. Daniel, are you okay? He hesitated, then locked his phone and set it on the nightstand. Of course. Just a long day. Liar. I had seen the way his hand trembled when I said the planet's name. I had heard the slight hitch in his breath. And now, I was watching him avoid my eyes. Something about that name had affected him deeply, and I needed to know why. The next morning, I arrived at the observatory early, my mind clouded with doubt. My team was still celebrating the discovery, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I went through my notes, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? Silence. Then, a voice I didn't recognize, low and cautious. You shouldn't have named it that. My breath caught. Excuse me? A pause. Then, more urgent this time, change the name before it's too late. Click. The call ended. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. What the hell was happening? I replayed the words in my head. The way the voice had sounded like a warning. But why? And then it hit me. Daniel wasn't the only one who reacted strangely to the planet's name. Someone else had noticed. Someone who wanted it changed. Someone who was afraid. The night after the announcement, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Daniel was beside me, scrolling through his phone, his expression unreadable. He had barely spoken since the press conference, offering only a forced smile when I asked him what he thought. Something was wrong. Did you hear the way the crowd reacted? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. I never expected that kind of response. Yeah, he said, without looking up. It was something. That was it? No excitement? No pride? He had always been my biggest supporter, so why did it feel like my success had left him shaken? I turned to face him. Daniel, are you okay? He hesitated, then locked his phone and set it on the nightstand. Of course, just a long day. Liar. I had seen the way his hand trembled when I said the planet's name. I had heard the slight hitch in his breath. And now I was watching him avoid my eyes. Something about that name had affected him deeply, and I needed to know why. The next morning, I arrived at the observatory early, my mind clouded with doubt. My team was still celebrating the discovery, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I went through my notes, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? Silence. Then, a voice I didn't recognize, low and cautious. You shouldn't have named it that. My breath caught. Excuse me? A pause. Then, more urgent this time. Change the name, before it's too late. Click. The call ended. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. What the hell was happening? I replayed the words in my head, the way the voice had sounded like a warning. But why? And then it hit me. Daniel wasn't the only one who reacted strangely to the planet's name. Someone else had noticed. Someone who wanted it changed. Someone who was afraid. I couldn't focus for the rest of the day. The voice on the phone kept replaying in my mind. Change the name, before it's too late. Why? What was so terrifying about a name? And why had Daniel reacted the same way? I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe Daniel had just been tired. Maybe the call was a prank. But deep down, I knew better. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through old research notes, pretending to work. My real focus was on Daniel. He was standing by the sink, pouring himself a glass of water. His shoulders were tense. His movements were slower than usual, like his mind was somewhere else. Should I ask him? Should I tell him about the call? Or was I just being paranoid? I clenched my fists under the table. No, I needed answers. Daniel. My voice was steady, but my heart wasn't. He turned, surprised. Yeah? I hesitated, then carefully said, That phone call I got today, someone told me to change the planet's name. I watched his reaction closely. His grip on the glass tightened, just for a second. Then, he forced a laugh. Sounds like a stupid prank. A prank? Daniel, I pressed. They sounded serious, like they were afraid of something. And you? I swallowed. You reacted strangely too, when I announced the name. Silence. He set his glass down, avoiding my eyes. I pushed forward. Do you know something about this? About the name? He finally looked at me and, for the first time in 8 years of marriage, I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. Let it go, Evelyn. His voice was calm, but his eyes held something else. A warning. Let it go? I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. This wasn't nothing. This wasn't a coincidence. Daniel was hiding something. And I was going to find out what. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel's words echoed in my mind. Let it go, Evelyn. But how could I? The way he had said, it's so calm, so certain felt less like advice and more like a warning. Something was wrong, and I had to find out what. The discovery the next morning, while Daniel was in the shower, I made my decision. I grabbed his phone from the nightstand. We never hide things from each other, or at least, I thought we didn't. But as I unlocked it, my hands, trembling, I realized I didn't even know what I was searching for. A message? A name? Proof that I wasn't imagining things? And then I found it. An email. Subject. It's happening. She named it. Sender. Unknown time. The night after my announcement. My blood ran cold as I clicked it open. You told me she'd never find it. Now the whole world knows. Fix this before she digs any deeper. I nearly dropped the phone. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. Who is this from? What did they mean by find it? I glanced toward the bathroom door. The water was still running. I had only seconds. Heart pounding, I scrolled down looking for more. Anything. And then a folder in his emails labeled confidential. I clicked it open. And what I saw shattered everything I believed about my husband. A name that shouldn't exist. There were dozens of attachments, news articles, old research files, official-looking documents, and then a single scanned page. It was an old, faded document, written in a language I didn't recognize. But one thing stood out. The name. The same name I had given my planet. I felt the air leave my lungs. How? That name wasn't random. He had chosen it as a tribute. A deeply personal memory from my childhood. It wasn't in any scientific records. But it was here, in an old file in my husband's secret emails. I barely had time to process it before I heard the water turn off. Panic surged through me. I quickly exited the email, placed his phone back exactly as it was, and forced myself to breathe. Daniel stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his shoulders. He smiled when he saw me. Morning. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Morning? He had no idea that I had just seen something that could destroy everything between us. And for the first time in our marriage, I was afraid of my own husband. I couldn't pretend anymore. For days, I acted normal. I smiled when Daniel spoke, kissed him goodnight, and kept up the illusion of the perfect wife. But inside, I was unraveling. The email, the secret folder, the name that shouldn't have existed. It haunted me, and worse so did the question. Who was my husband, really? The confrontation that night, I waited until we were alone in the house. The air between us was thick, heavy with unspoken truths. Daniel sat on the couch, typing on his laptop. I watched him from across the room, my pulse pounding. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Who sent you that email? His fingers froze over the keyboard. Slowly, he looked up at me. What? I stepped forward, my hands clenched at my sides. The email you got the night after my announcement. You told me she'd never find it. Who are they talking about, Daniel? A long silence. His expression remained unreadable, but I saw the shift in his eyes the moment he realized I knew too much. I pressed on. And the documents in your emails, the ones about my planet, you knew that name before I ever said it. How? For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he shut his laptop and placed it aside. And he sighed, not in shock, not in guilt, but as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. A truth I wasn't ready for. Evelyn, he said quietly, you need to listen to me very carefully. I swallowed. No. You need to start telling the truth. A muscle in his jaw tensed. I wanted to protect you. That's why I didn't say anything. I let out a hollow laugh. Protect me? From what? His gaze darkened. From the people who don't want that planet's name to be spoken. From the truth that could ruin everything. My breath hitched. What truth? He hesitated but just for a second. And then he said something that shattered everything I thought I knew. You didn't discover that planet, Evelyn. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My mind rejected it. It wasn't possible. I had spent years searching, calculating, proving that it was new. A new world. My world. Daniel leaned forward, his voice lower now. That planet, it was already known, decades ago. But it was erased from every record, every archive, as if it never existed. I shook my head, my heart beat a frantic drum against my ribs. That doesn't make sense. Why would someone erase a planet? His lips pressed into a thin line. Because of what was found there. Something cold slithered down my spine. What was found? I whispered. Daniel exhaled. A message, a signal. But not just any signal, Evelyn. My hands trembled. Then what? His eyes locked onto mine. A message that had your name on it. Everything inside me stopped. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My name? I repeated, barely above a whisper. He nodded. That's why they erased it. Because that message, it shouldn't have been possible. It was sent long before you were even born. My knees felt weak. The room spun. No, no, no. I had spent my entire life searching for answers in the stars, but I never imagined that the stars had already been searching for me. I sat frozen, my mind unraveling like a frayed thread. A message, with my name, sent from a planet that was erased from history. A planet I had just rediscovered. None of it made sense. And yet, deep down, I knew it was real. I sucked in a shaky breath, gripping the edge of the table. Daniel, why didn't you tell me? His face was unreadable. Because I knew what you would do. What should I do? My voice cracked. You would go looking for the truth, he said simply. And, once you do, there's no turning back. A shiver ran through me. There was more. I could feel it. I forced myself to ask the question that had been clawing at me since the moment I found that email. Who sent that message? Daniel hesitated. And then, finally, you did. The world tilted. I let out a breathless laugh. That's not possible. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Evelyn, he said, voice low. The message was dated over 70 years ago, long before you were born. And yet, the technology used to send it, he swallowed. It was far beyond anything we have now. I shook my head. No, that's insane. You don't have to believe me, he said. But the people who erased that planet, they believed it. The weight of his words settled over me like a suffocating fog. A message. From me. 70 years ago. Had I been there before? Had I somehow already known about this planet? Or had another version of me sent that message? The thought sent ice through my veins. The final decision, I stood abruptly, my mind racing. If what you're saying is true, I whispered, then I need to go there. Daniel's face darkened. No. Daniel, you don't understand, Evelyn. He cut me off, his voice tight with urgency. If you go looking, they will find you. My stomach twisted. They. The people who had erased the planet, who had buried the message. I took a step back, my pulse pounding. So what? Am I supposed to just forget this? Pretend it never happened? Yes, he said, because the alternative is worse than you can imagine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. And then I realized something. He was afraid. Daniel, the man I had trusted more than anyone, was terrified. Not just for me, but for himself. I didn't know who these people were. I didn't know what power they held. But I did know one thing. I couldn't ignore this. A planet wiped from history. A message carrying my name. A truth hidden in the stars. No matter the danger, I had to find it. That night, when Daniel fell asleep, I made my choice. I packed a small bag. I took only what I needed. My research, my notes, the coordinates. And then, as quietly as I could, I slipped out into the cold night. As I walked away from the life I had built, the life I had thought was real, one thought echoed in my mind. The stars have been waiting for me, and now I am finally coming home.